Hello and welcome to another Saturday spirituality group. And I have a special guest, Steve Behrman, whose alter ego is Swami Beyondananda. And Steve is going to share his personal spiritual journey as well as morph into Swami Beyondananda from time to time. Take it away, Steve.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. And let's start with I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and then we'll have the Swami appear through the magic of I'll turn my video off and the turban will come on. The Swami, by the way, is turban powered. So when he puts the turban on, he has the power to answer your questions and you will question his answers. So let's see, how did I start? Well, I spent my deformative years in New York City in a housing project in Brooklyn. And at a very, very early age, I discovered that I had a gift for comedy. And in fact, there's a sign that you're chosen by God for this for comedy. It's the first time you're in a lunchroom and you make another kid laugh so hard that milk comes out of their nose, and that's a sign from God that you're gifted and given that. So I was that kid. It was a housing project. It was kind of tough living there, and the older kids would try to shake me down for money. And what I learned to say was, "Hey, I live here. If I had money, would I be living here?" So they'd laugh and leave me alone. So essentially, I was doing stand-up comedy for money at the age of 9. My spiritual path as a child was baseball. I loved everything about baseball. And growing up in New York, one of my favorite baseball characters was Casey Stengel. He was manager of the Yankees at that time. And the story was that when Casey Stengel was a rookie, the fans in New York hated him. And every time he would step up to the plate to bat, he would get booed. This went on for a while. And then one day, Casey Stengel walked to the plate to bat. The fans booed him, and he tipped his cap, and a little sparrow flew out from under his cap, and the entire ballpark stood up and cheered, and they never booed him again. So I've taken that as a child. I understood the power of humor. Imagine one playful gesture opening the hearts of 20,000 New Yorkers. So the lesson is, if you're going to flip somebody the bird, make it a real bird, okay? So I had this as a kid. I really had this idea that humor was a powerful tool to free the mind and heal the heart. Here's a true story. This actually happened during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Um, there were a group of economists, Russian and American economists, meeting to discuss the possible trade between these two countries. And when news of the missile crisis hit, everything stopped, and there was tremendous tension and silence in the room. And finally, one of the Soviet delegates very timidly raised his hand and he said, "I suggest we each go around and tell a joke." And he volunteered to start. His joke was, "What's the difference between capitalism and communism?" In capitalism, man exploits man. In communism, it's the other way around. And the whole place came down in laughter. It totally broke the tension because his joke broke the trance of separation. It broke the trance that there's a difference between this ism and that ism, and they were able to continue and do their work, and there was a healing that took place. So I've always remembered that in my comedic career. Now, of course, as a kid, I never imagined I would actually be doing comedy for a career, because in those days, I was told to get serious. And perhaps there's some people watching around the call who might have been a little bit too frisky and playful as a kid, and they get serious. So I got serious. In New York, by the way, in those days, if you're in, you could advance and skip the 8th grade. So, but I was in college by the time I was 16. And so there I am trying to fit in, trying to blend in, trying to be serious. And it was going well, except I'm in this sociology class and with another, maybe 250 other very, very bored individuals. And I'm in this state somewhere between sleep and deep sleep. And from the corner of my ear, I hear the professor. And the professor is talking about social mores. And she said, now, who can define for us social mores? And without thinking, I'm up, and what comes out of me is, when the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, at some more, and everybody burst out laughing, except the professor, who gave me a D in the class. So I earned that D. Very few people can say they earned a D. I started out with a B and I earned a D. And so I went on to a career teaching. I started an alternative high school in Washington, D.C. I had my dream job teaching auto workers at Wayne State University in Detroit, teaching them labor history and ethnic studies. And a funny thing happened. And sometimes a funny thing will happen that ain't that funny. And the funny thing that happened to me was I got laid off from my job. They had all of these tenured professors they had to place, and I was a temporary, and so I got laid off. And the only job I could find was working for the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan, taking down trees that had Dutch elm disease. Now, I'm not lying here. This has actually happened. My blessed my Jewish mother, I could see she looked worried, which was her job. I said, "What's the matter, Mom?" She was afraid that I would catch Dutch elm disease. I said, "Mom, people don't get Dutch elm disease. Dogs get it." She goes, "Dogs get it." She was worried about Buster. She said, "What happens to dogs?" I said, "They lose their bark." So while I was working at this tree work job, I it was kind of a dark night of the soul. I'd been teaching at a Wayne State University. I taught a writing class at University of Michigan. I had a book published by Simon and Schuster. Here I am chipping brush every day. And the universe had a better idea. And another funny thing happened. They put me with Larry Kelso, who is a brilliant psychologist disguised as a truck driver. And he and I decided that we would start a newspaper for the guys at the shop. I had no idea at the time what I was getting into. This was, 20 years before the Onion or the Borowitz Report or anything like that. And we totally transformed the workplace using humor. We were able to tell the truth through humor. It was an ongoing interactive situation comedy where all of the fellow workers were characters in this. And some of the stuff we reported just the way it happened, and some was slightly embellished, and some of the stuff was totally made up. So we did this, and it totally transformed my perception of of my great gifts. I could see that humor was a way to bring people together. It was a way to tell the truth. And I realized that I was really good at it. And so a couple of years later, this is in 1980, another friend and I started a publication in Ann Arbor called Pathways Magazine. And it was about holistic health and spirituality and so on. And we understood that people took this very, very seriously. And we recognized that, as somebody once said, life is too serious to be taken seriously. And so we had Swami Beyondananda became our character and our mascot in Pathways Magazine. And he instantly became the most popular feature. Back in those days, I think the two things that people were concerned about in those days, half the people wanted to lose weight, and the other half of the people wanted to have more money in their lives. And so the Swami came up with a mantra to help you lose weight and have more money at the same time. And the mantra was, everything I eat turns to money, and my drawers are full of cash. So that was very popular. And over the years, the next few years, the Swami column got syndicated in papers around the country. I met my wife Trudy in 1985, and she and I launched the Traveling Swami and Trudy show, and we've been traveling around the country and the world all for the last almost 40 years now. And from my personal spiritual path, I think originally it was really, I didn't grow up in a religious family, let's say. But what I discovered over time is that there is a power of love, and having to embody this Swami character helped me become more open-hearted. In New York, the comedy in New York is I learned how to insult my friends. That's what we did. That was how we played with each other. And in New York, if you don't insult your friends, they get insulted. They go, hey, what's the matter? I'm not good enough for you to insult. So that was my humor before Swami. There was a pivotal moment when I first started doing it. I don't do comedy clubs, but this this one time I did a show in Chicago at a mob run club. I will call it the Slime Light. And there I am doing the Swami, this kind of open-hearted character. And there's three drunks in the audience that are just being totally obnoxious. The Swami stops the show and he says, I think you're baiting me. And when you bait a great spiritual master, do you know what that makes you? That's right, a masturbator. And everybody laughed, and the three guys left. And I said to myself, you know, I'm really good at insulting people, but I don't want to do that. I want to be in an audience situation where people can be open-hearted and not have to feel that I'm going to be a Gallagher smashing a watermelon and getting watermelon juice all over them. I want people to feel comfortable in laughing at open-hearted humor. So from that point on, I decided to choose venues where people would be more open to looking at laughter as a way of healing. And the word healing, by the way, means restoring wholeness. And so as I've learned, laughter and comedy helps us get the whole picture, particularly in times, you know, the Swami's joke is that we are living in serious times, and yet there's definitely something funny going on. So what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, so you can have an opportunity to bring the Swami on. I'm going to bring the Swami on. He's going to do a little bit, and before we come up with the official Q&A, I'm going to ask Dan to unmute himself, and I'm sure that he has a number of burning questions for the Swami before we even get to that part of the program. So I'm going to sing a song, and I'm going to put myself, I'm going to make myself invisible while the Swami appears, and when the song is done, the Swami will appear. Okay, so I'll be right back after this message. Swami, how I love you, my dear old Swami. I'd give the world to see the smiling face of Swami Beyondananda. We're here waiting for you. Where are you, Swami? The folks out here can't wait no more. So step onto that Swami floor. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. And you know what? We have no choice because no matter where we are, we're always here, and it is always now. So how many of you would like to be in the now more? Well, too late, already then. If you want to be in the now, you have to be very, very quick. But I predict that living in the now will be the wave of the future, and time itself will become a thing of the past. Now, I know this is true because I was a futurist in a past life. Of course, now I spend all of my time in the timeless now. I think they call that Alzheimer's. Well, anyway, it's wonderful to be with this group of people who are awakening and enlightening, and of course, enlightening can strike at any time, so pay attention. Now, one of the great powers of humor is to bring people together above and beyond the great divides. Now, in this country, and maybe in the world, we have a deeply divided body politic. Half the people believe the system is broken, and the other half believe it is fixed. And the good news is that there is a great uprising happening. Uprising. In the old days, when people were dissatisfied, there would be a revolutionary uprising to overthrow the system. Now we need an evolutionary uprising to overgrow the system, to learn how to step off the battlefield and onto a new playing field. Now, the uprising involves a 4-step program, which is mathematically proven to work 3 times faster than 12-step. So here are the 4 steps. Wake up, wise up, grow up, show up. Wake up to the illusion of separation. Wise up to the power of loving coherence. Grow up from children of God to adults of good and show up on a new playing field, ready to play a new game. Thrival for each and all. Intentional mutual benefit, where we overgrow the rule of gold by practicing the golden rule. Now, we human beings, we have been living under the rule of the lowest common denominator for thousands of years. And this has created a lot of toxicity and has left us with a lot of residue, if you know what I mean. The golden rule. The rule of gold is do unto others before they can do unto you. And now the question that faces humanity is, can we undo the do that has been done? Or will the done do be our undoing? Now, people ask me, what is your spiritual path? I am a fundamentalist with the accent on the fun, which is not to be confused with fundamentalism, accent on the mental. See, the fundamentalists, they say heaven is above us. The fundamentalists say heaven is where we make it. So why don't we go for heaven on earth just for the hell of it? Because we are not here to earn God's love. We are here to spend it. We call this supply side spirituality. Be more supplying and less demanding. That is the great secret. And so as a fundamentalist, I believe that life is a joke. But God is laughing with us, not at us. The creator is watching the comedy channel. We're what's on. We are given free choice in life. We get to decide whether or not we laugh. So if you want to be miserable, go right ahead, whatever makes you happy. But I say that underneath all of the stress and distress and sadness in life, there is a deep well of joy. And every time we let laughter bubble up out of that deep well of joy, we experience deep wellness. But sometimes we forget to laugh. I want to ask you a question. Has anybody out there gone a day recently without laughing? That is called irregular hilarity. You need a good laughative every day to keep you laughing. Now, a more serious question. Has anyone gone a week without laughing? Oh my God, you may be suffering from hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids, that is an enlargement of the onus, where you feel so much responsibility, the only thing you're ever able to pass is heavy judgment. No. Now, we say laughter is healing, and maybe you've heard the story about Norman Cousins. He was a great writer about 50 years ago, diagnosed with a life-threatening illness that was so serious that I can't even, the name is even too hard to pronounce. Instead of going to the hospital, he checked into a hotel room with Marx Brothers movies and candid camera reruns, and he got well. And when he got well, the medical establishment decided they are going to study the healing power of laughter. And what they, it's kind of like, well, it works in practice, so does it work in theory? And so what they discovered is that when we laugh, it creates these hormones called endorphins, are natural painkillers. Laughing improves immune function. Laughter lowers the blood pressure because when we laugh, it causes our blood vessels to dilate, which is better than having them die early. I want mine to dilate as late as possible. And so also something else, you're going to love this. Laughing burns calories. So I've started a new program. It's called Laugh Your Ass Off. So I'm sure this is called Lose Weight and Lose Weightiness. Very, very important. Now, people ask me, Swami, will there ever be peace on earth? And I have great news. There will be peace on earth. I certainly hope we humans are around to enjoy it. Yes? Are we going to achieve critical mass before we hit critical massacre? That is the question. And so I would say, if you're worried about the puzzle of peace, I'd say that each of us brings a piece of the puzzle. Each of us, all of the inner peace that we've been cultivating, Time to let it all out and declare all out peace. Because a little piece here, a little piece there makes one big piece everywhere. And so, given people say, well, will we ever have peace in the Middle East? I go, first of all, we need to have peace in the Middle West, right? In our own country, we need to heal the breach and laugh together because it certainly beats crying separately. Laugh together and focus on the virtues and the values that the vast majority of us who are not sociopaths have in common, so that the golden rule can indeed overrule the rule of gold. And I want to take a stretch. If you don't like the current programming, very simple, turn off your electronic devices, turn off your TV, and tell a vision instead. That's where I tell a vision to you, you tell a vision to me, and we have a healing and functional vision to step into. And that certainly beats what we've been stepping into. And so I will share my vision. I will share my vision. Imagine all of the people of the world coming together, practicing peace together. And there is the peace mantra, which we all can do to help us do that. It's called peace on it. A pax on all of your houses. Okay? Now, imagine the golden rule overruling the rule of gold. Now I'm going to stretch your imagination right now. I want you to come with me. I know it's going to be a stretch. Imagine going to the voting booth, and instead of voting for the lesser of two evils, you're voting for the greater of two goods. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Swami, you are proposing a sane world. You must be crazy. Well, I say there's no need to change the world. There is a better way. I say, let's toilet train the world and we'll never have to change it again. Yes. And so part of the way we deal with releasing all of this negativity is through the positive power of laughter together. In fact, one of the great spiritual practices is laughing in your own face. Now, this is a high self-esteem activity, because if we can laugh in our own face, laugh in the face of our own human ego, then we can laugh in the face of all of the difficulties that we have. So that is the spiritual practice. Now I understand that I am wanted for questioning, so maybe perhaps Dan can begin with perhaps a question, and then we can open it up to the audience, and I'll answer some questions, and then we'll bring Steve Behrman is channeling me right now, but then later on I can channel Steve, and he can answer some other questions for you. So if you have an answerable question for the Swami will have a questionable answer for you.
All right, I would like to now. Angela has to go soon, and she's perhaps your biggest fan here. I'm a fan too, by the way. So Angela,
Fantastic. Okay,
and
Angela.
it's not a fantasy. Okay, go ahead, Angela.
I'm just enjoying this so much. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. Do you have a question for the Swami? Is there a burning question, something that you've always wanted to know? If there's something that's puzzling you, ask the Swami and have it puzzle both of us. Maybe you have an answer then.
Angela, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, you're immutable. Okay, good.
Yes, I'm muted. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Oh, okay, very
this.
good. Well, that is excellent that you're already complete. I want you to, I want to say to give you the Swami blessing. May you wake up laughing and leave laughter in your wake. Thank you, Angela, for being here, and thank you for being a follower of the 12 guidelines.
Now
I don't really. Yeah, go ahead. Yes,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah. No.
Now I want to introduce Stan the Picture Man, who's the co-host. He's another co-host. Oh, I'm going to make you co-host. Okay, Stan? Stan, unmute yourself. Say something.
I'm welcome. Nice to see everybody, and Swami, thank you. I'm just really enjoying this. I've heard of you somewhere in memory, maybe in another life, but I'm really enjoying this. I love wordplay and use that so much. Anyway, so I'm grateful to be here and nice to see everybody else.
Thank you, Stan the man. The way that I learned wordplay, I actually studied wordplay in India, in the Punjab, and I learned the language of wordplay called Punjabber. And so I can jabber in puns on and on and on and on, because that is what words are about. What happens when we get serious is that we think that there's only one meaning for everything. And so when we start to disrupt the mind with different words and different interpretations, then we begin to enhance our creativity. I remember somebody asked me, Swami, how do you feel about wild game preserves? I said, oh, I think they would taste terrible. I'd stick with strawberry. So part of the idea of wordplay is you'll begin to work with different meanings and different levels of meaning with people. And then people begin to go, oh, maybe my usual rigid way of thinking needs to be disrupted. And, as part of the spiritual practice, I think we live in a society where we have made the human mind God. The whole idea about artificial intelligence, I think that we're neglecting the real intelligence of the loving heart. And so what comedy does is that in the head, we have these dueling dualities, right? It's either this or that. You're with us or against us, black or white. And so what comedy does is it helps us. When we laugh, after the ha-ha, there's an aha, an awakening in the wake of laughter. And then we leave the dueling dualities of the head, the belief systems in the head, for the unity of the heart. And the more we expand our hearts, the less we will need to shrink our heads. So hearty laughter, ha, 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 puts us in the heart and makes us a magnet for other people going, hey, I'll have what they're having.
Let's see now. We have questions for the Swami. Bonnie Shell. Unmute, Bonnie.
I missed the fourth thing. Wake up, wise up, grow up. What's the
And
wise?
show up. You got to show up on a new playing. Show up.
Okay.
That's okay. That's what it is. And by the way, this uprising is very powerful because we are living in this invisible culture of separation, where we are kept separate from each other, where it's this versus that, where it's Republicans versus Democrats, where it's religious versus non-religious. And really, if we are to evolve, if we are to achieve our humanifest destiny, where we evolve from children of God to adults of good, we need to come together on the same playing field and recognize that instead of fighting each other about what we don't want, we need to work together for what we do want. Once we realize the power of love, power of loving coherence, we go, you know what? I bet you that things would work a lot better if we focus on pulling together. I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, you've probably heard this story. Off of the coast of Florida, there were some bathers that were stuck in the riptide. They were going to be swept out to sea. The bathers on the beach made a human bridge, a human chain, to reach these bathers and pull them to safety. Now, I guarantee that on this human chain, people are not asking, hey, are you a Democrat or Republican? No, it was all people pulling together. And in our society right now, we have a tug of war where people are pulling against one another. What we need to focus on is like that, a tug of peace where we're all pulling together in the same direction. That is the vision I want to keep. That's what it means being off of the old battlefield and onto a new playing field. So I see some hands. Yes?
We got Anne first and then Kira next.
Namaste, Swami.
Oh,
So
good. I'm glad you're staying. I'm namaste too until let's go. Okay.
Good. Well, all across the country, when we think differently and speak differently and get really spiritual, they just want to lock us up now. So I want to think, could we make could you actually make some ashrams? So if they lock us up, we could be with you instead and heal. What do you think about that? I'll talk to Mary Adams about that. What do you think?
Well, I think that the ashram is the ashram of the heart where we're all together. And we live in this ashram that actually permeates the whole world. And we express this ashram through our face. Oh, we got somebody that needs to be muted. Okay, that's good. We express this ashram through our faces and so on. People ask me, because the world is in such serious conditions, Swami, how can I uplift the world? And they look like this. I say, okay, begin by uplifting the corners of your mouth into a smile. That is the levitational pull. Pulling your mouth. This actually changes your body chemistry. If you're not happy, just do this. Because when you move your muscles in that direction, your body thinks you're happy, and you begin to produce happiness chemicals in your body. Yes, so that's one way. Now, in terms of locking people up, I know that a lot of people had some difficulty during that period of time where we were locked down. I think being locked down is a downer. I like to look at it positively. We were not locked down, we were locked up. And even though we didn't achieve herd immunity, we did achieve herd mentality. So I think in order to, when people are put into fear and when they're put into anger, it actually puts us into fight or flight, right? So what happens is we become less creative, more easily able to be manipulated. So when you begin to look at the narratives that are being purveyed out there, they're trying to manipulate us left and right. So we need to rise above those narratives that keep us divided in the head and focus on the narrative that unites us in the heart. We're all one with the same one, the universal oneness. The universe has us surrounded, might as well surrender. And we surrender to the power of love. And the good news is love is more powerful than fear. Otherwise, we'd be singing, all you need is fear. She fears you, yeah, yeah, yeah. So we're not singing that, and that is good. So the ashram of the heart begins when we begin to broadcast love. We create heaven on earth from the inside out. Heaven is not a destination. It is a practice and a way of being.
Go ahead, Kira.
Hi, can you hear me? Again,
Yes.
I'm sleeping, so I have to talk kind of low. No, I think your puns are brilliant. And listening to them, and also, sort of, I feel a little inspired to try to, exercise my brain by, trying to think of puns. I mean, here and there. Yours were just, brilliant. I also, I really appreciate, the trying to find the middle ground, politically. I'm wondering, in terms of humor, in the same vein, what do you think that, like, dark humor also is part of the holistic, humor thing?
Well,
With
yes.
lighthearted?
Well, I think there is a distinction between holistic humor and asa-holistic humor. I do think that that's the case. But I think that the darkness is something that's wonderful to make jokes about, because when you shine the light on the undarkened corridors of power, you expose the naked emperors. And so it is very important. Think about the court jesters of old. They were the only people who were allowed to tell the king the truth. And so right now, and speaking about dark, I don't know if anybody here has if you've ever been a policeman or a fireman, a firefighter, or worked in the ER, you'll find that people who work in those dark situations, they often use humor as a way to release the tension. And if you were to be a fly on the wall, so to speak, in some of these settings, you'd be shocked at how it may seem callous, but it's a way of releasing all of that stress so that you have the capacity to face the next tragedy that you have to deal with. Now, I think that that humor needs to bring people together rather than create separation. And so in asking, do I want to do this joke, is it a joke that's going to bring people together, or is it a joke that's going to create separation and hatred? And so that is the line that we want to walk. Remember that there's this thing about the neutron bomb that would actually kill people and leave buildings standing. We need an opposite of that. The right use of humor destroys ideas that are obsolete and obsolete and need to be destroyed, and leaves people standing, leaves us whole in the process. I just, if you're paying attention, comedians like Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld, they will not go on campus because of the restrictions, the ridiculous restrictions. And my cohort Steve can talk about that in the second half hour of this. But one of the things is that people have become so serious and so protective about what they call microaggressions, these little insults that they perceive that are very insignificant, that they ignore the macroaggression, which is forcing us to live in a culture of separation, where we are put on the battlefield one against the other, rather than pulled together to cooperate and collaborate and rehumanize ourselves around the heart.
Sandy, do you have your hand up? Sandy Ellen Brower, unmute yourself.
Yes, I do. I loved your story. I thought it was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there something that that's puzzling you right now about the world situation, or as the better word is situation, about the situation in the world, that might perhaps we can shed some light on it? Or the lightness of laughter. What would you like to bring laughter to, perhaps, in your world? The world at large or the world at small? Either one.
Say that again, I can't hear you.
What is it that you would like to bring laughter to in either the world at large, the big picture, or the world at small? Your little
world at
world.
large.
What?
The world at large.
I couldn't hear that.
I think she wants to bring laughter to the world at large, Swami.
The world at large.
Yeah.
Yes, the world at large. Well, I have had that prayer myself. I want to bring peace to the world. And I traveled on the higher planes. If you're on the higher planes, if you lose your baggage, that's good. You won't take it to your next lifetime. But I was praying for peace in the Middle East. And perhaps you know the story about this little old man. This is many years ago. Every day for 25 years, he would go to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem and pray for peace. He was a very modest man, very quiet man. And somebody found out about it, and a reporter from the Jerusalem Post was told about this man, and she approaches him very gingerly, and she says, "Excuse me, sir, I understand that every day for 25 years, you have gone to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem to pray for peace." He goes, "Yes, that's true." And she says, "And you haven't missed a day." He goes, "That's right, I haven't." She says, "Tell me, what's it like to go to the Wailing Wall every day for 25 years and pray for peace?" He says, "It's like talking to a wall." So I had the prayer for peace, and I'm on the higher plane. I'm sitting next to this guy. He looks so familiar. I say, "You look very familiar." He says, "Yes, I'm George Gershwin." I go, "Oh, George Gershwin, the composer. Wow, what are you doing these days?" He says, "Decomposing." But I said, no, look, he had a great sense of humor, by the way. I said, and he said, I watched the affairs going on this planet from afar from the other side, from the world. And I am very unhappy because the Palestinians and the Jews, they are they're cousins. They speak almost the same language, and yet they cannot seem to get along to save their lives. And so he has offered me a song for peace in the Middle East that I will share with you now. Okay? Goes like this. You say salam and I say shalom. You throw a bomb, I blow up your home. Salam, shalom, we blow up our home. Let's call the old thing off. You say baraka, I say baruka. I spin the dreidel, you toke the hookah. Baruka, baraka, this warfare, it's kaka. Let's call the old thing off. And oh, if we call the old thing off, we'll all be right. And so, if we all are right, well, there's no need to fight. I eat the kasha, you eat the kibbe. We both dig falafel, but never pork ribby. To kasha, to kibbe, forget the pork ribby. I think there's one thing we agree on. Haven't we had enough? Let's call the old thing off. Oh, yeah. Let's call the old thing off. Uh-huh. Let's call the old thing off.
Wonderful, Swami. Wonderful.
May it be so. May it be so.
Now, I have a question, but my questions are not as important as the questions of our audience. So I ask, if you have a question, you please unmute yourself this instant and ask the Swami a question. I'm sure that maybe perhaps James or Karen or Gail or Bluebird or Brian or who knows who else? Anyone? Okay, and if you already asked a question, please just hold back. All right, well, no one's unmuting themselves. So my question for you, Swami. Now, there are a lot of people out there claiming to be gurus, claiming to be enlightened people, and they have followings, and they have people who even worship them as gods. And yet they commit these immoral acts, sexually taking advantage of their followers, or stealing money, or coercing people into pouring money into their bank accounts. So, Swami, how can you tell a good guru from a bad guru?
Well, I think that the shadow often, the bigger the light, the bigger the shadow. And I know a lot of these religious leaders, they claim to be following the big guy upstairs when really they're following the little guy downstairs, if you know what I'm talking about. So, so actually, I'd say that the key to finding your guru, and I'll spell it out for you, G-U-R-U. G-U-R-U. So what we want to do is you want to follow the leader that's in your own heart, that is connected with this great transcendent loving oneness. Yes, we have teachers, and sometimes our teachers teach us by being the bad example. I personally don't have any followers because I get paranoid when I think I'm being followed. In fact, somebody said, Swami, I want to bathe in your darshan. I go, listen, last time somebody bathed in my darshan, they left a ring around it, okay? So I would say that what you want to follow is you want to follow the love in your heart. Let that be your guide. And, stop placing faith in other human beings. It's like in God we trust, everyone else pays cash. So you want to actually be careful about putting all of your faith in another human individual, because they will actually, there's all of these pitfalls, and you don't want to fall into the pits.
Thank you, Swami. All right. Now, even if you've had a question before, and if you have a second question now or a comment, please go ahead. And Swami, we may just lapse into silence, but that's okay, because silence is what, Swami?
Golden. Yeah, silence is great. In fact, and this is very, very important. This is part of creating peace. I went to one of these silent mindfulness retreats. It was so quiet you could hear an opinion drop. Yes. And I don't know how many people have practiced mindfulness. It's very powerful. I went to a great mindfulness teacher who taught me the secret. He said, if you want to be peaceful and mindful, 2 steps. First step, you want to clear your mind of all thoughts. Then you want to focus on the center of yourself. I did it and it worked. I am now thoughtless and self-centered. So any more questions? I still have several answers left.
Wondering, Swami, is it possible to have too much fun?
Is it possible to have too much fun? Well, that is really a good question to ask every day and see if you can reach that limit. See if you can reach that limit. Because again, fun is magnetic. Yeah, I'll tell you something. I met, and again, what do we bathe ourselves in? How do we actually allow ourselves to become happy? It's by what we think about, what we allow into our field. Years ago, I met a man who had to be the happiest man I've ever met. He was glowing. And he was a psychiatrist. I'm looking at him, his face is glowing and he's got this smile. It's like light coming out of his face. And he had gray hair. So I said, you're a psychiatrist, right? He goes, that's right. He says, and I say, you have gray hair, so you've been practicing for years. He says, yes, 30 years. I said, tell me your secret. How can you spend 30 years listening to people's problems and look the way you do? And he said, who listens? So that is one of the secrets of happiness. Pay attention to what you're listening to and what you're not listening to, and focus on the feeling in your heart and let that radiate outward. And that is how we bring heaven to earth. More questions?
Thanks. Thank you.
Yes?
Sure. I always have questions, as Dan knows. Okay, now that the masculine gods have kind of mucked up a lot of stuff with the humanity, what advice do you have to the goddesses as they come back down?
Well, this is very, very important. This is a world that needs balance. Some of us it's yin and yang. Some of us are yang at heart and others are in with the yin crowd, right? So we need to bring these dueling dualities together as dynamic duo dance partners. In the culture of separation that we've been living in, where it's either this or that, we have pitted these things against each other. And when we have the masculine and the feminine, the masculine principle of structure, the masculine principle of order, structure, building things, that aspect of creativity, and then the feminine structure of nurturance, of intuition. In our so-called civilization, because back up 400 or 500 years ago, the spirit and the spiritual and the material were divided into two. The science got custody of the material world, and religion got custody of the spiritual world. And so we have not, and neither of those two have honored the feminine. I don't know if you know this, but our Constitution is based on the Iroquois nation's separation of powers and confederation. We took a lot of our structure for our government from the Iroquois nation, but the one thing that we didn't take in that culture, the Council of Grandmothers, the elder women, were the ones who decided whether the tribes went to war. And they were the ones who could impeach a chief who was unscrupulous or incompetent. So in a certain regard, that feminine wisdom was given a very important place in that culture. And because we have ignored that feminine wisdom, we are in the situation where the masculine has run rampant, both in terms of patriarchal religion that's nudged out the intuitive feminine, and in patriarchal science that fails to acknowledge the existence of anything that cannot be measured. So the new feminine is not about fighting for women's rights or gay rights or anything like that. The new feminine is about bringing us together around the heart and soul of humanity and uniting these two sensibilities, the masculine and the feminine, to work together for a holistic culture rather than having them be at odds. Because right now, in our masculine based, and by the way, even feminism is masculine based, where it's on the battlefield fighting something else, rather than creating this new playing field that's based on feminine intuition. So it's not about preaching, it's about practicing. And as more people awaken to this, they'll recognize that the true unity is in the heart, and we must bring in the feminine wisdom to elevate us above and beyond the masculine structures of the mind and of patriarchal religion. No, does that make sense?
It does, because I'm in female form. So may the vision be with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We need more forums and fewer against them. That's right. Okay. Before I switch into my other persona, yes, there's a question. Yes.
Oh yeah. No, I appreciated what you said. Again, about the, balance and bringing, sides or different aspects together. I appreciate that a lot. Um, uh, uh, I'm wondering if yeah, I don't know if the word happiness is kind of specific to this country. It may, but exist. I've heard of other countries and cultures that don't focus on happiness. I'm wondering if you have, that concept. I mean, maybe a similar, mindset, or I'm just wondering if you can think of, if you have other words other than
Well,
happiness.
this is very, very interesting, because our culture, we talk about pursuing happiness. And you look at some of the people who have been pursuing happiness, you look at their face and go, wow, they must have run right past it. And happiness is an inside job. We create it from the inside out. And we create happiness by serving other people. A lot of the self-help movement has been, hey, give me a second serving of self-help. I want to help myself. And people are left selfishly helpless sometimes. So because the focus in this so-called civilization is about individual enlightenment, we fail to recognize our connection with other people, and that it's great to have our own connection with spirit, but then we need to express it in our actions in the world. One of the great projects I've been working on is the 12 Habits of Unity. And perhaps if you Google 12 Habits of Unity, you'll find our website. And this is 12 habits to practice on a monthly basis that involve serving other people, that help enhance our own personal happiness and make the golden rule a practice in the world, where we bring that to the world. So I think what you're looking at is that we are so focused on our individual happiness that we fail to recognize that what we call happiness is based on living in a happy culture. The country of Bhutan, a number of years ago, decided that they are going to be the happiest country in the world. And they are focused on gross national happiness rather than gross national product. Because they want to recognize that it's not how much we consume, and we are consumed by consumerism, if you know what I mean. It's not how much we consume, it's how much we're able to give to other people. In Buddhism, there is that mantra, may all beings be happy. And so what that means is that I am included in that. Nobody is excluded from that. So when you meditate and practice for the happiness of all of us together, that includes each of us as well. So I think that is the expanded view of happiness. It's not something that you get, it's something that you give.
All right, Swami, we have about a half hour left. Would you like to morph into Steve Berman for the Behrman, sorry, for the last
Yeah,
half
that's okay.
hour?
Okay, I'm gonna morph. Okay, I'm gonna turn the camera off and off with the turban and
Oh, and
on with my
do you
own
have a
bald head.
song for morphing into Steve Behrman?
That's a good question. I'll have to think about that. Let's see, what song would I? Oh, I'll channel Sam Cooke. But no, who would I? Okay. Okay, I'll channel Sam Cooke. Don't know much about astrology. Can't figure out numerology. Don't know Eastern philosophy. Ain't read the Celestine prophecy. But I do know that we are one. And if we all join in the fun, what a wonderful world this would be. Oh. Turbans off. Okay, so now you can, if you want to talk to a real person, here I am, and I think maybe more serious questions, or maybe not, but this is an opportunity to talk about, my own journey and how this may be of benefit to you.
Now, Bonnie Shell, you unmuted yourself. Is that because you have a voice and want to use it?
Yes. Yes,
Go
can I
ahead.
do that?
Yes,
you can.
yes.
Okay, Steve, you started out by saying that most comedians just make nasty remarks about their wife or somebody and people laugh. And kids cutting up will humiliate one kid. I mean, it's all negative and people laugh. How could you be a stand-up comedian and talk about people and make it positive and also funny?
Well, that's what I've been doing for 37 years
I
now.
know.
That's what I've been doing. I think that if you understand the comedian archetype, and I'm typical. I mean, I grew up in a very bad neighborhood, and I used comedy as a weapon and a shield. And so my first year teaching in Washington, D.C., one of my fellow teachers looked at a comment I wrote on a kid's paper. He says, "Wow, that's mean." I went, "No, that's funny." He says, "No, that's mean." And so that was the first glimpse I had of taking away the comedy as a way of thinly masked aggression and defensiveness. And many in the comedy industry are this archetype. And frankly, I'm not in the comedy industry. I don't do comedy clubs. I don't like the meanness. And the idea behind what I do is to actually bring people together. When I first started doing comedy, very few people understood what I was doing. And in a certain regard, I was as dangerous as Andrew Dice Clay, as Sam Kinison, as these loud and negative comedians, because I was calling for a different way of being and opening hearts. And so having this Swami character show up, I like to say I got struck by lightning during a brainstorm. Having this Swami character show up helped me make my humor more gentle and less mean. And so I've had to, again, with a comedic mind, I've had to sometimes stifle myself. My wife Trudy and I, we have a game that we play, and I'll come home and I'll say, "I was a good boy." She'd say, "Oh, what didn't you say?" And then I'll tell the joke that I was going to say, and we both laugh about it, and nobody was hurt, nobody was insulted, and we both get to laugh. So I think any joke between consenting adults is appropriate. And I think what's happened is that we've gotten so oversensitized because of the toxic insanity in how children are being taught in schools, to make everybody more sensitive than they are, and then to give people status based on how victimized they appear to be. And what that does is it perpetuates victimization. So I've seen this, I've been watching this go on for 50 years. And so my humor is designed to destroy ideas that separate us, that are toxic. And I remember years ago, I did an event, I think it was 15 years ago, in Denver. It was the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and it was a conference called the Transpartisan Citizen Summit, bringing people together above and beyond the gap. Barbara Marx Hubbard was a speaker. I was a speaker. We had on the left, we had Cynthia McKinney, who is a radical leftist congresswoman from Georgia. We had Grover Norquist on the right, who's the guy that wants to stop taxing us, and he said, make government small enough to be drowned in a bathtub. And so the comedy that I did had to actually appeal to all sides. So I started out by saying, as a Swami, now I have been asked not to do any divisive material tonight. So you've been a wonderful audience. Good night. And that's how I started the show. Then I was able to do the material. And I said, okay, we have something for everybody. For you Republicans, we're offering sensitivity training. For you Democrats, we're offering insensitivity training. And the idea being that because we've been polarized into these two tribes where the masculine virtue of valor and protection has been put over into one political party, and the feminine quality of compassion has been put over into the other. And what I've seen as a political scientist, that's my background, although I actually have to confess I never actually dissected a politician in poli-sci lab, but my background is political science. I see that one of the oldest rackets in the world, divide and conquer. So so what happened during the Iraq War was that, remember, something you don't see anymore. You used to see these bumper stickers that say, support our troops. We don't see that anymore. Because what happened was, during the Iraq War, the conservatives became very disillusioned with the war machine. And so they recognized that their valor was betrayed. What's happened over the past bunch of years since the beginning of the Obama administration, and then continuing through the COVID lockdown, where we were leveraged to believe that by following their protocols, we were protecting other people, rather than recognizing that we were losing our medical autonomy. It was betrayal of compassion. So there is an awakening that's happening right now, where people are recognizing that both sides have been betrayed by the political gurus they put their faith in. And now we have to gather together and find the whole truth together. So I think that's what this real upwising is about, is to recognize how we've been betrayed by these divisive narratives and come up with a truly unifying narrative where we are all in this together. We all want the same thing. We all want to live in a world where our children can be, my joke is that we need to move past the identity issues that have kept us separate and focus on the identical issues we all share together: clean air, clean water, clean food, clean government. And that is what this upwising is about as we face this divide. 50% of the people in this country now identify as independent. They don't identify with either political parties. And I think the reason why we've got somebody like Donald Trump as a candidate of a political party, and by the way, the Swami says we have to be compassionate. Behind every soulless healed, there is an unhealed soul. And so, light workers, your job is not just to heal souls, but to re-soul heals, right? The reason we have that character running is because our political system is so dysfunctional, and people have lost their ability to have a voice, and so they'll put their faith in. They'd rather have a sociopath than what they perceive to be a sociopathic system, and we have to find an alternative to that.
I hope you all process that wisdom that just came out of Mr. Behrman. Now, let's see. We have two people whose names I will mention who have not spoken yet, but who may actually be listening off camera. That is Karen and James. So let's see. How about Karen? Karen, are you there presently? Can you unmute yourself and say anything? I'll request that you unmute me. It is possible that Karen is just there in name. Hello, Karen Smalls. Karen. Hello? Karen. Karen. Okay, moving on to James. James, are you there more in just name? Have you been paying attention? I know paying attention can come right out of your wallet, but it's okay. It's worth it. James, are you there?
Oh, if you're hearing that, he is channeling Marcel Marceau. That's what it is. Okay.
So Karen and James are just there in name, unfortunately. I bet they're having a wild party in their homes. All right. Karen, Kira, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, kudos to you, Dan, for getting on the pun train, but I say leave it up to Swami. No. I'm just playing. I'm not. I respect Dan, so that's my, I guess the yin yang or whatever balance of playing and also respecting him. I just, Steve. I just appreciate. I keep saying it, but it's true. I mean, what you said about the what's going on politically. I think, I just think that was as wise as can be and very important to hear, because you don't hear that often nowadays. There are some people, some talking heads that are approaching the situation with the sort of more complex gray area thinking that you were, but not that much. And the way that you said it was
well, they're not allowed to speak.
Great.
They're not allowed to speak. I was just on a call with Marianne Williamson, and this campaign was really devastating to her because once, when she was on the debate stage in 2019, and she got up and said, we have this big healthcare situation. Why don't we actually talk about some of the causes, like some of the bad food that we're eating and so on? That was the end of her campaign. They wouldn't let her speak after that because she was calling into question the military, industrial, media, big pharma, high tech, and mega food complex that owns the system. So if you're, and so there are dueling narratives, both of which are limited. If all you do is watch anything from CNN on all the way to the left of MSNBC, you're missing the story. You're in an echo chamber that's telling you what you want to hear. Same will be true of people who only listen to Fox News. Many years ago, I wrote an article about Fox News called "Come On Baby, Fight My Liar." And it was about how they consistently lied. And then I said, and this got me in trouble with the progressive magazine I was writing for, I said, obviously, conservatives like being lied to, whereas progressives prefer lying to themselves. And that's what I've seen. Virtue signaling as opposed to virtue. I just did a cross-country tour in the fall and talked to people all over the place. And what I found is that there was such a, and my progressive friends Nobody liked this woke mentality. Nobody liked this pushing this transgenderism, crazy ass stuff like you can't use the word women, only pregnant persons. I swear to you, now officially you can only say pregnant persons. I'm thinking, what would Aretha do? You make me feel like a natural person, right? It's fucking crazy, right? So then we end up, our last show is in Port Townsend, Washington, near Seattle. And we had a full house. It was a full house event. However, there was a protest. On Facebook, there was a protest against the show. Some guy from Black Lives Matters and one of his fellow guilty white person followers who protested the show because I was a white guy wearing a turban, obviously making fun of brown-skinned people. Never mind that I've been featured by People magazine in India. Never mind that I performed for Swami Beyondananda. All of these things. So what I'm noticing is that the failure of the progressive side is the failure to stand up to this insanity. And consequently, Donald Trump is in danger of being elected because of the shadow that's been unacknowledged. I think we do have a glimmer of hope in Bobby Kennedy Jr. I think he is capable of bringing the two sides together and neutralizing Donald Trump's campaign in the sense that he is speaking to the kernel of truth in the midst of all of those lies. He's speaking to that kernel of truth, and he's able to say it because nobody on the progressive side, the talking heads, and I'm friends with some of these people. I'm friends with some of these people, and I can't imagine why they won't look at the shadow. But they won't, because you cannot defy the narrative that the drug companies have imposed. You cannot defy the narrative that those who are pushing the war in Ukraine and unmitigated support for Israel, you can't go against these narratives. And what's happened is that they've lost the American people. And the American people are either not voting or they're protest voting for Donald Trump. So I think we do have a chance for awakening this middle way. And for me, it's through the Kennedy campaign. I don't agree with everything he stands for, but I do believe he's a man of integrity who is not owned by anybody. People voted for Trump because they don't believe he's owned by anybody. But he's, I'm from New York. I know the archetype. He's a true sociopath. So people are much more willing on that side to vote for a sociopathic individual than for what they're coming to believe is a sociopathic system. And I happen to agree that it is. So we need to wake up the people who are our friends and neighbors who are compassionate progressives and invite them to poke their eyes outside of the narrative and wake up. And one more thing I'll say about this. Maybe it's 1965. 1965 was the year that I was the first kid on my block to be opposed to the Vietnam War. And that was a very unpopular position in those days, but I started seeing the bigger picture. I had a good friend. I was a freshman in college, and I had a friend who was in Army ROTC, totally gung-ho military and so on, and I was a pariah to him. But 2 years later, he was protesting the war with me. What happened in those 2 years? Teach-ins and a great uprising, where people began to recognize that the narrative that they were being spoon-fed, the Babylon coming from the Tower of Babel, was not true. And they began to think for themselves and poke themselves outside the narrative. Returning soldiers from Vietnam told a different story than what we're being told. And my paratrooper friend began to hear these stories and turned against the war. So I'm hoping, we don't have 2 years now, I'm hoping that between now and Election Day, enough people wake up to recognize that there is no change inside the two-party system. We're simply being pulled into a culture war that nobody can win, and we need to bring these tribes together in a gathering of tribes where we focus on intentional mutual benefit. What do we all want together? And once we start asking those questions, we can actually turn this around. And if we don't, we'll be pulled onto the battlefield where nobody wins except the sociopaths.
All right, this is pretty heavy stuff, and I'd like to check in with everybody to see how everyone's doing. But before we do, there's Sandy who has her hand raised patiently. Unmute, Sandy. Oh, all right. I guess she had her hand raised, but doesn't have anything to say. All right. Ann Casper, how are you feeling in this moment?
I'm feeling great, and it's nice to hear somebody who reflects a lot of the thinking that I have. And I'm very lucky because I go from literally coast to coast between Oregon and New York, and I'm watching all these different dynamics and really appreciate what you're saying. And I also study international economics. That's my first degree. So I see this happening, and thank you. And we could also use, I think, our movement, which is the mental health civil rights movement, which is a secret because no one knows this because we're not paid by the big pharma and all that yet. Or maybe we won't get paid by them. We could use some help. We could use some jokes. And so I hope that the Swami can come out and help us sometimes and make some jokes and turn the thinking around that we're all one, that we all deserve a good place to heal, no matter where we're at. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate that. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
My question is, how do your family and friends feel about your comedy?
Everybody loves it. Everybody loves it because the comedy is open-hearted. The comedy is also open-hearted. When I went on the road, I decided that my job on this last tour in October was, we called it the Love and Laughter Tour. And the idea was to bring people together above and beyond the divisions. And when we did our show in Santa Fe, the feedback that somebody wrote in was that it was so heartening to see people that I know are dyed-in-the-wool conservatives and people who are progressives sitting in the same room, laughing together at the same jokes.
That's great.
I think that like one of the jokes that's actually worked in talking about in addressing the lockdown and so on was saying, well, we didn't achieve herd immunity, but we did get herd mentality. Everybody laughed at that because they recognized the truth. And
I just laughed at it.
Yeah. And so and then when I visited my cousins, and again, most of the people I know in my tribe, are on the progressive side. These are, my parents were New Dealers and my family and all of that. And when I was visiting my cousins in Cleveland, and we talked about how during COVID, the treatments that would have helped people at the early stages were suppressed, like ivermectin and all of that, and a lot of propaganda about that. And I talked about that, and my cousin, she got very quiet, and she said, yes, I think that's the case. But inside that echo chamber, when people are watching Rachel Maddow and all these people I've lost complete respect for, Colbert, I have no respect for these people anymore. They are just parroting a narrative that they were paid a lot of money to parrot, and if they didn't, they'd be off the air. In 2003, in the lead up to the Iraq War, remember Phil Donahue? He was the most popular host on MSNBC, but because he questioned the Iraq War, and maybe there weren't the weapons of mass destruction, maybe weapons of mass distraction instead, he lost his job, just like that. And people like us did not protest. They did not protest. And so, somebody, Dan, you mentioned silence. This is the silence of the lambs. The silence of the lambs is not speaking up against the insanity. Somebody said, and I think it's been attributed to Voltaire, those who are made to believe absurdities can be made to commit atrocities. And when you look at what a one-sided narrative, we're right and everybody else is wrong, what can be done? You know, during the pandemic, you know, I chose not to take the shot because I looked at it and I went, my immune system just fine, thank you. I don't need this untested, you know, medication. I'm happy with everybody else who took it. I have no problem with that. But for people calling for people like me to be put in jail or put to death, you go, wow, man, that's some very intense insanity. Our bodies ourselves. Remember that? Our Bodies Ourselves, the book that said, you know, women's right to choose and master her own body. What about our bodies ourselves? Don't we have any choice as to what medical treatments we put in, right? That position was completely silenced and nullified by the people we would be voting for if we voted Democrat. That's a very, very serious thing. So I think right now this is a time of reckoning, and for people who do have a different point of view, it's time to gently speak up and speak out with your friends and family and not get into arguments, but simply present the idea that maybe they're not hearing the whole picture. And wondering, don't you wonder why Donald Trump is so popular? You know, don't you wonder why people are talking about these, you know, people dropping dead on sports fields and nobody questioning that and calling it sudden adult death syndrome? Aren't you tired of the insanity? And what I found in my tour in speaking with progressive people, I was able to create a wedge, enough of a cognitive dissonance between what they were told and what they wanted to believe, because who wants to believe you're being betrayed by your government? Nobody wants to believe that. So this is a time when we need to metabolize all of that stuff by bringing all of the love that we have in our hearts, all of the connection we have with this transcendent spirit, and put it on our face, put it in our hearts, and begin to speak the truth from that point where you're not arguing with people, you're simply presenting something, and you're not getting on the battlefield with them arguing. You know, I like to start by asking people, why do you believe that? What made you believe that? And sometimes you find that when you listen to people's personal histories, one more story and then I think we're done. Years ago, I was buying a car, and it was right after Spontaneous Evolution, the book I wrote with Bruce Lipton, came out. And the guy who is like the financial guy who, you know, takes you through all of that, you know, he's asking, what do you do? And I said, well, I do comedy, but I just wrote a book called Spontaneous Evolution. And he said, oh, I don't believe in evolution. I've accepted the Lord Jesus Christ as my savior. I don't believe in evolution. We had to be with this guy a whole day, the whole afternoon, and while we're waiting for the car to be delivered. So I asked him, what was it that brought you to your faith? And he told a story about being a Vietnam veteran, totally traumatized, total PTSD, became a gutter drunk, literally a gutter drunk. And at one point, he just had this vision of Jesus reaching out his hand. And from that point on, he totally changed his life. And I could see he had this love in his heart. And he told his story. And he started crying. And he hugged my wife, Trudy, and I. And he said, you're the first people who've really listened to my story. And he says, when you do your Swami show here in Santa Rosa again, I want to come to your show. Even though I'm a Swami that he doesn't believe in, because he recognized the connections that we have at the heart. So if we make a heart-to-heart connection, connect at the heart, and I'd say there's a 75% chance that the head will follow.